Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're reviewing Royal Caribbean's Explorer of the Seas. It's a Voyager-class ship that's been sailing for over 2 decades, but still remains one of the most popular mid-sized cruise ships in the Royal Caribbean fleet. It holds over 3,600 passengers, but it doesn't feel really small. It's easy to get around, but it has all of the amenities that you're looking for in a ship. So the big question is Explorer of the Seas still worth booking in 2026? So today we're going to cover the cabins, the food, the entertainment, the activities, the service, the crowd levels, and whether this ship feels outdated or surprisingly underrated. And by the end of the video, I'll tell you exactly who this ship is perfect for and who should probably book something else instead. So let's talk about embarkment and first impressions. Embarkment was actually smoother than expected. Royal Caribbean really has improved their embarkment and boarding process. I've never had a problem with Royal Caribbean's embarkment. I have had problems on other cruise lines, but Royal seems to have embarkment down. So first impression, well, the ship is definitely a classic Royal Caribbean feel. You're going to notice immediately the Royal Promenade, the glass elevators, which I absolutely love. There's lots of brass and older style cruise decor. But, honestly, the layout still really works. Compared to the new mega ships like Wonder of the Sea or Icon of the Sea, this ship feels smaller and more manageable. But honestly, some cruisers actually prefer it. So you don't spend half your vacation walking from one neighborhood to another. It's fairly reasonable and easy to get around and be able to find what you're looking for. So let's talk about the cabin. We stayed in an inside cabin, and overall the cabin was comfortable and functional. But the honest truth? You can definitely tell it's an older ship. The cabins aren't as modern as the newer Royal Caribbean ships, but they're still clean, they're well maintained, and they're fairly spacious, depending on the category. Storage was decent, the bed was comfortable, and housekeeping was absolutely excellent. Now, the bathrooms are probably where you feel the ship's age the most, because it's a smaller shower. And we did have trouble with our shower not draining great. And they tried to fix it, but it was actually a more base issue. So it wasn't able to be fixed. So it had some drainage issues. But everything worked okay. So if you care more about value, the itinerary, the atmosphere, than ultra-modern rooms, you're probably going to be completely okay here. So let's talk about food. Of course, there's the main dining room. And the main dining room is actually one of the strongest parts of the ship. And it's really a great experience because service is fast. Staff is friendly. They go above and beyond all the time. And the food quality was pretty consistent throughout the sailing. Some dishes were absolutely excellent, and others were just okay, which is pretty normal on most mainstream cruise lines. So to sum it up, the dining room is a great place to go for your evening meal. I don't really care for it for breakfast so much because it just seems to me like I could take my time someplace else because they will make your eggs for you in the windjammer. So let's talk about the windjammer. When you go in for breakfast, it's really solid, especially at breakfast. I enjoyed it for lunch and I even did some suppers there. But for breakfast, you can find your eggs, your pancakes, some international options, some pastries, of course, all nicely freshly made, some fruits. You're going to get the late night snacks. You're going to find different options, and you're going to find the family friendly one. They make excellent burgers, and the pizza is pretty good too. So there's lots and lots of different options, and they divided the buffet out really lovely so that there's an area if you're just vegetarian. There's another area if you are gluten intolerant. So you don't have to wonder what's in it. You can actually go to the buffet now and eat at the buffet. What I really love is that you can go and you can order your omelets, and the omelets will be freshly made for you. So I really enjoyed that. But there was also eggs Benedict and also fried eggs or whatever you wanted seemed to be there. And if you didn't find what you wanted, quite often they were more than happy to help you out with it. So let's talk specialty dining. There's several options for specialty dining. So some of which are Chop's Grill, Isumi, and Giovanni's Table. So if you want a more elevated dining experience, the specialty restaurants are probably worth considering. So you will find lots of different options. And on this ship, this time around, we went to Chop's Grill, and it was amazing. So you notice the jump in quality immediately, especially for the steak and the seafood. The steak was so tender. It was just wonderful. So I would highly recommend it if you are looking for that kind of experience to investigate the specialty dining because it is well worth it. So let's talk about activities and entertainment. So this is where Royal Caribbean really excels as a cruise line. And this is where Explorer of the Sea still shines. It might be an older ship, but there's actually a lot to do. So if you were looking, I did a lot of sea days on this because I did a transatlantic the last time. And they had dance lessons. They had, of course, the trivia. They had Spanish lessons. They had how to make different kinds of gifts and sushi lessons and all sorts of things. So there's all sorts of things and activities that you can be involved with. There was even the sexiest man contest and all sorts of things like that. So it depends on what your interest is, but there's a lot of things that you can be involved in. You can obviously just chill all day long if you want, but you could also get involved in a lot of the activities that's going on in the ship. So if you want to be a little bit more active, there's a rock climbing wall. And then there's the Flow Rider Surf Simulator. And they even had times where they did lessons and would teach you how to do that. Of course, there's the mini golf, there's the sports court, of course, the pool, the hot tub, and then this ship has an ice rink. So if you want to go back to ice skating, you can do that as well. And throughout the ship, there's always live music. And one of the things I really liked about Royal was they have an orchestra. So some other ships have used in some recorded music to enhance their music and their entertainment. But Royal uses an orchestra. So they are actually producing the music without using the recording. So that's basically some of the activities. Let's talk more about the entertainment. So the entertainment, as I say, they do have an orchestra. So they were playing on the promenade quite regularly. There was a guitar player that played, as well as the orchestra would support some vocals. There was a band. There's all sorts of things that you would find just wandering through the ship. But there's also the theater. The theater had something almost every night. Sometimes there were game shows, and sometimes it was a magician, or it was some acrobatics, or a complete show, musical show, which they brought in some people that were so amazing that they just made your eyes want to cry just because it was so beautiful. So I really enjoyed the entertainment. And usually they were offered an early show and an evening show. So you weren't lacking for something to do. And of course, then they also had the Star Lounge, which was a very comfortable place if you wanted to go to the lounge in the evening and maybe dance or listen to some live music. It was all there. So that gets into the nightlife. At night, this ship gets surprisingly lively. You're going to find the trivia, the karaoke, which on Royal seems to be really good. The live bands. There's quite often a theme party, whether it's the 80s or a white night or something else. There's usually quite often theme parties. If you want to dress up and be part of it, you are welcome to do that. And of course, the casino. stays busy late into the evening. So there's always something to do. Of course, the Royal Promenade has a couple of bars in it, as well as it has a coffee shop. So you can always get your late night snacks or whatever you're missing or needing on the Royal Promenade. So let's talk pools and public spaces. One thing I noticed right away was this ship actually has a good balance of public space. Even on sea days, it rarely felt impossible to find some place to sit. And of course, you can always go on this ship at deck 4, where you can just go outside and it's a walking path around the ship and there's chairs there. So if you don't have a balcony, you can go and sit there and just watch the ocean if that's what you want to do, if you just want to be alone. So yeah, there's still the chair hogs. They still exist. But it's a cruise ship after all, and people are people. But compared to the new mega ships carrying 6,000 to 7,000 passengers, Explorer of the Seas feels slightly less chaotic. The promenade was one of the few places where it was extremely busy quite regularly because there was so much activity on that. But most of the ship, you could find quiet places to be. So let's talk about service. Service was consistently strong throughout the cruise. Royal Caribbean staff are usually the highlights of any experience. And this sailing was no different. The staff was friendly, hardworking, and genuinely engaging. Our stateroom attendant remembered our preferences very quickly, and the dining room not only remembered what kind of tea you wanted or what you really liked, they worked to make the experience more personal. So things to know before booking. So let's talk about a few things you should know before you book the Explorer of the Sea. First, it's not a brand new luxury mega ship. So if you're expecting massive neighborhoods, high-tech cabins, and non-stop wow factors, you're going to feel underwhelmed. But if you want more of a classic cruise experience, a manageable ship size, solid entertainment, and usually better pricing, this ship actually delivers really well. So who's it good for? Well, it's good for families. There's a lot for the families to do. And there are the family centers where the kids can go and learn things and have a good time while the parents relax. So it's good for families. And it's good for first-time cruisers, as well as the older cruisers, or people that have a little bit of mobility issues so that they don't have to walk quite as far as some of those mega ships. Also for people who prioritize itinerary over the ship itself. Because sometimes those mega ships just can't go everywhere. So sometimes if you want the better itinerary, you need to go on a ship that's a little smaller. So is Explorer of the Seas really worth it? Honestly, if your expectations match the product, so you're expecting good food, ability to be at sea, have a good time. The Serenity pool was amazing that you could go into the hot tub. The spa was great. This ship may not compete with Royal Caribbean's newest giant, but it still offered solid entertainment. I was very impressed with the entertainment. It has good food and the service is solid. And the classic cruise atmosphere that many people love, including me. I personally rate Explorer of the Sea probably an 8.5 out of 10. The only reason it would go to 8.5 is that I found the Royal Promenade to be quite crowded quite often. And there was a bar on the Royal Promenade that really needed to be a lot bigger than it was. But would I sail her again? Absolutely, I would sail her again. I enjoyed the ship. I enjoyed everything about the ship. But it has to have the right itinerary, the right price, and the right travel style. For my transatlantic, it worked perfectly. So if you found this review helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out my other cruise reviews and travel content. And let me know in the comments, would you sail on Explorer of the Sea? Or do you prefer the newer mega ships? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember, if not now, when?